conversation. It's the conversation. Y'all ready? Y'all ready? Let's go. Let's go. No filter, no restrictions. You about to get my opinion in its purest form. So my words, don't try to spin them. What I said is what I said, and what I said I meant it. The gloves are off now when I'm coming out swinging. So engage in verbal combat, but you better be ready. Cause this here for me is light work, even if the topic's heavy. I'm ready for it all with no running from nothing. You just take the time to digest what I put in, no rushing. But time is moving, don't waste it. You want the real, come and face it. Come sit and talk to me if you want it straight without a chaser. And it might burn a little when you step on up to taste it, but it's nothing harsh, I promise. Just a little conversation.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of The Conversation with Harold and Dave, or Dave or Harold, or whichever way you like it. I could take it either way. Uh, get your minds out of the gutter if you're in the comments.
It was
Here we
bad.
go.
It was bad. I was stifling.
You know what? It's the thing with guys, no matter how much mature we get or how educated you get, men, we're just still immature.
It's not dirty if you aren't, but I am. So yeah, there's that.
Wow.
That's funny because with that being said, and just like Farag was saying, just a little conversation, we're talking about free speech today. That's always a great topic, right? Uh,
Always.
and we've been asked that a lot because what's going on around the world today. A lot of people make comments on social media, and we've seen a lot of people losing their jobs based on things that they are saying on social media. And this is not a new problem. And I don't know why people aren't getting it. This has been happening since the height of social media. People losing their jobs and scholarships with things that they've said on social media. So you have a large group of people saying, this is ridiculous. This should be illegal. We have freedom of speech. And then that leads to another thing of people are not understanding you do have freedom of speech. What they keep telling you is, but you're not free of consequences. You can say whatever the hell you want. If you want to come up in public and call me the N word, it is your right. But if you get punched in the face, that's your consequence.
Not my fault.
It's not my fault. So, what do you think on this topic, freedom of speech? It's something that we're always going to talk about. It's always going to be around. Uh, Harold?
Well, again, we in this current climate, and actually the climate that we've been experiencing that's been heightened over the last, I can almost say decade. It's at if not more, longer. But it's evident that people, which were much more divided and less culturally sensitive towards one another, and you're seeing people that feel that they have the right to say whatever they want, which is true in a sense. However, there is a consequence. If I go on a theater and yell fire, there's a consequence for that. If I, attempt to make threatening remarks towards certain individuals or remarks that is, as in the case which we've just seen with the, I think, federal case with Rudy Giuliani, he made certain statements regarding those two women, and what happened? They held him liable because his statements caused those women to have their lives changed for not the better, but for the worst. So, yes, we do have a freedom and ability to say whatever we want, meaning that more so that we can criticize our government and not be in fear of some level of retribution. However, there are certain statements, if you make them, they can cause for some level of a response or reaction that may, without we hope not, could lead to some level of violence, and that's definitely something that we definitely need to be mindful of in what we say and how we say it.
Yeah, the amount of things that people say, and you look at it and you say, did it not register in your brain that you might not want to put that out there? As Herm Edwards used to always say, don't press send.
Right.
And that's why I always say when people talk about younger people in social media and the things that they see them do, I always say, I can't get on them because I'm glad there was no social media when I was 16, 17, 18. That I might have done the same stupid things. We think nostalgically like we wouldn't have, but it's not even the young people today. It's people, when you're 48, 54 years old, you should know better on what you can say out loud and what you can't say out loud, especially depending on who you work for. So the biggest thing that people are talking about is, should employers have the right to discipline their employees? I'm going to be short with it. I know, Dave, you're going to go deeper into it. The answer is yes. If you are a representative of my company and you do things that I view aren't in the standards of my company, and that's a whole nother argument, then, again, that's a consequence. How do you feel about that, Dave?
Well, and with a lot of caveats, and I think there's a certain, in all of these things, there is a certain, okay, what is it that you did, and
Mhm.
um, and but also there's, I mean, first of all, when it comes to employers, I think, well, if I'm an at-will employee and I'm not covered by a contract or something, um, although the contract can have clauses in it too. Um, the we look to employers to be driven by a profit motive, right? You might call it corporate greed, but it's that kind of, that what drives the marketplace is this incentive. And so you get rid of your employee when holding it is going to be detrimental to your business, right?
Mhm.
And the thing is, though, so as you could only say to employers, you can't get rid of somebody for what they said. If you tell their customers, you can't stop using this company because of what their employee did. And I think as long as consumers have a right to boycott a company, then a company is going to have a real interest, material interest, in getting rid of anybody who brings discredit upon the company in a way that would hurt its business. And if that's a crass way of looking at it, I would say that profit motive is what keeps your company from from randomly discriminating, or needlessly discriminating. Because also, if a company gets rid of somebody for like they dump someone because they said something the company found unpopular, but most people don't, the company faces the same kind of backlash. And so the market mechanism, imperfect, I'm sure very imperfect, but that's what's going on there. And so, you know, an employer has to be able to get rid of an employee if the customers are able to get rid of them, and they are, and they're going to.
And there's a risk assessment with that. I mean, every company has a demographics of their customer base, right? So if I live in a certain area, like I live in Morrisville, it's heavily Indian populated, not Native American, but Indian populated. So if I had a small business in this community and you want to say disparaging things against Indian people, I'm pretty much going to have to fire you.
Your history, you're out of here.
Yeah, because I mean that would be, and that's what happens. The company's looking at what's the first line in a lot of the companies' mission statements or whatever you call it. I'm sorry, diversity. That's always the word that's thrown in there, and then you have this representative of your company doing that. We know as government employees that you can't do any of that. You know that's off the table, and I think people go to the extreme of, we're not talking about you making a political statement towards one party or another. We're talking about those big things that you should stay away from: homophobia, being sexist, being racist. you know those are kind of the easy ones, right?
Yeah, and also, in politics, it used to be the companies would just say, yeah, no partisanship. Don't come to work. The Biden Harris hat is as verboten as a MAGA hat. Just don't bring that to the workplace. And they use, and so, and I think most people know that you can't be partisan because you're going to offend. You're going to offend somebody, and and so that's the thing. I just, there was a Reddit I just listened to the other day where somebody had this problem of she was with her family at she didn't say what the store was, but it was like a Dollar General or a Dollar Tree with discount store. And this guy did the whole, hey, you'd get farther in life. You smile. Why don't you smile? You go farther in life if you smile, which is rich advice from somebody at a checkout counter uh, in a Dollar General. But and this young woman went out and told her family. She's like, "Did you hear what that guy said?" And the thing is that at the end, she finally complained to the company, and it had taken a while for her to kind of say, no, that's not right. And they had already fired the guy, right? Because he was creeping out the employee. She was not the only one. But there's a case of saying something not necessarily wrong, even, right? Not on the face of it. uh, Hey, smile. On the face of it, you're being pleasant. You seem well intentioned, but you're just clueless and you're offending the person. No, we can't have that crap. And so the Dollar General rightfully got rid of that person, uh, because you can't be pissing off the people coming through the checkout counter.
I mean, I really don't have anything to add to that. That's definitely correct. Harold, what do you have to add to this?
I would say we become hypersensitive nowadays, and it's not always what you say, but what people hear. I can say something and it be totally misconstrued, and next thing you know, it's deemed offensive when there was no offensive intent, or even contextually, there was no offense embedded within. But nowadays, people are so afraid of lawsuits, being sued, or being viewed as, i.e., racist, sexist, you know, homophobic, or xenophobic, whatever those phobics are. We're so afraid that someone's not going to like it or agree with what we say. However, it's not always what we say. Sometimes it's how it's said, or to whom it's said. Because what I may say to Dave, he may not be offended, but if I say it to you, you might be offended. So it's just a matter of now contextually, how do we communicate with one another? There's so many communication breakdowns that exist within our society, and
Mhm,
everybody's looking for the next payday or the next viral moment,
mhm.
that it's even scary to try to even communicate
And,
within our society
and this
nowadays.
is kind of, and I totally agree with you, and I have no sympathy for it because basically, like we're talking about freedom of speech and consequences, we're a product of our own environment. For so long, we've allowed people to do whatever they want, say whatever they want. We don't have to go through an expanse of the history, but we all know what we did and how we treated women, how what we did and how we treated minorities, what you could say to a woman and a child and a minority and someone who's homosexual in broad daylight in the middle of the street, and it was okay at certain points throughout our history, you know. And now you can't. And I feel like the people who get most upset about it, like you two aren't upset about it. You explain it. But you get these people that are upset about it. And I'm like, what are you really so upset about that you can't say these bad things anymore? You you can't do these certain bad things anymore. And you're annoyed because the first thing someone yells is they're taking all our rights. We can't um, say certain things. I can't call someone the F word for a homosexual on TV anymore. Everybody's so sensitive. Like, why do you feel the need to have to?
Yeah, and I agree 100%. But like I said, we become so hypersensitive that no matter what we say and how we say it, if we go back now and, for example, look at Eddie Murphy's first two live concerts, they'd
Hmm.
probably be banned in today's society because of some of the language that he used. Even though it was jokes, still people even don't allow comedians
Well,
comedians the latitude to say certain things that they used to be able to say,
I'm
and
gonna
now it's off grounds.
I'm
I'm
gonna
playing Eddie
agree.
Murphy in
I'm
my
gonna
head.
agree, and I'm gonna disagree. I'm gonna agree, and I'm gonna disagree. Even
Hey,
back then,
Norton, get in here.
even back been, and it's happening today because Bill Burr can do it, Dave Chappelle can do it. It's always been if you're at a certain level, you can get away with things that you can't when you're not at a certain level. And it's up to the comedian to evolve the way to do it. The way Bill Burr and the way Dave Chappelle does it is kind of crafty and unique, and that's what you got to do. And but I agree with you in the fact because I'm disagreeing with that point about the level. But what I agree with you is comedians should be off limits. That's their whole job. If you don't like the comedy, don't go to the show. Listen to a different comedian. You know, because a lot of these comedians are different on TV and on radio than they are in their special. Look at Robin Williams, Bob Saget. You go to their comedy show, that's a whole different person versus who they show you on Full House and on the radio, you know?
Morgan
So,
Mindy.
yeah.
Nano.
There's a couple things to that though. I mean, because Harold is everyone is so he's saying everyone's just so outraged by this, and early on before Trump was elected, right? Back when I interacted regularly with people who would subsequently vote for Trump and all, because I do a lot. I volunteered at the railroad. It was a bunch of old white guys, and the thing is that in the South, I don't know why I was surprised, but the thing is though, people started talking about political correctness, and even young guy, not even. I remember there was one young guy who just was, and he's obviously he's someone who's probably got his own MAGA hat now, but he was saying, I think political correctness is a real problem, and at the time, I could understand that because he was expressing Harold's point, and it was that idea of if I say something inadvertent, right? Like, maybe I do just see a young lady there and I say, oh, come on, give me a smile, right? And that is, I don't intend that to be bad. I didn't personally do it a lot, but I wasn't aware of it as being something I really, really don't want to do until that episode of Blackish where where they take the father and his Andre and his father out to us, and the young people are schooling him. I never thought of it, but there's a thing of like, look, I didn't mean anything by it, right? Someone could get offended by that, and that's, I think, was what political correctness was. Hey, I'm saying something that I don't intend, and I'm causing unintentional, harm. And that's one level. Unfortunately, that in the MAGA era, the backlash is to say horrible, terrible things, right? Is to go and call everyone horrible, hateful things, and just like, oh my God, and to be, and it's like, wait a minute, you're not unintentionally, like when I stopped going to the railroad was when Trump had been elected, or it was the beginning of the end at very least, when Trump was elected and Obama was in the news, and one guy said, why the hell is he still there? Shouldn't he be back in a cotton field? Is what this guy said about Obama. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Blatant. And a lot of people also reacted negatively to this guy saying that. So it wasn't like everyone was laughing.
Mhm.
But at the same time, it's like, no, that's blatant racism, right? And what the hell, right? That's not, you're intentionally being a DB here. And that's not what political correctness was. So, like, we flipped the script there so quickly
Mhm.
to where now you know, it's hard to say, all right, where are the limits of being offended? Where, do we have teachable moments where we say to people, hey, look, if you're offended by somebody in an interaction, maybe you should ask a question, make them aware of it, and you'll get an immediate apology. You won't feel bad. They will learn. maybe we could go down that route and say, yes, you young people, we don't know how to interact properly. Yeah, but that's gone, because we know that someone who's saying that kinds of things is likely to be spewing hateful bile and rhetoric. And so that was a rant, but
Well, but that's why I see it actually visibly as someone who forcibly now has to watch as much YouTube and TV as possible. I see it. It's been kind of trending in the other direction. At first, it started to be everything was offensive. And now people are really gearing on these people who are saying just the outrageous things. Like you look at the Karens, the Kevins, you look at the people who are saying just blatant racist things to workers at a restaurant, and things like that. And people are now actually starting to get on people who are like, really, you took offense to that? All he did was ask you to smile. Like, come on. And I kind of see it shifting back because a lot more people are getting kind of fed up. There's a funny picture on not funny picture. There's a picture on here that says free speech. I don't know if you guys can see it.
the
And,
umbrella.
and it's kind of like the thing some guy said, everybody likes free speech until someone says something they don't like. You know, free speech for me, but not for all of you. Can you say something racist and not be a racist?
Well,
Well,
I just did. I related the story in the third person.
I think everybody can be racist, but not everyone experiences racism. I can be racist, just on my own and how my actions and my words are stated, and my actions are, exhibited. However, I don't have a system that supports me suppressing someone else or hurting someone else, so I can't exhibit racism. If I'm allowed to elaborate a little bit, because again, when you look at the way the system has been designed, we see that it has supported racism. Even when you talk about reparations, they're talking about suing the government, and many of those who don't understand racism object to it because they will say, well, that was back then. It's not being done now, when we still know that redlining is still happening. We
Harold,
still know that certain institutions are doing certain things against certain races, i.e., with Navy, I think it's Navy Credit Union or whatever that credit union that's now currently in the news
Navy
for
Federal.
decline. Right. So, when you're looking at racist versus racism, I think, yes, individuals can be racist. However, a certain segment of the population only has the power to be or to exhibit racism.
Oh, Harold, you're spewing nonsense. Ever since the freedom of slavery, everyone was equal. Stop it. It's been equal
Hey,
for everybody. You're ridiculous. There was no Jim Crow era.
no.
But what I was meaning more so of someone who makes a statement that can be viewed as racist,
Mhm.
but that person's not actually a racist. Because Martin Luther King, I think he was the one that said it. Correct me if I'm wrong. The two biggest things are um, conscientious stupidity and sincere ignorance. And I was standing in a group of friends in Texas, Texas, and I was the only black guy in the circle. And they were all having a conversation about something. I was in my phone. I really wasn't paying attention. And then one of them asked me, "What are my thoughts?" So when I started explaining and filibustering my thoughts, his response was, "You speak really well." Okay, I already see Dave smile. Because, see, that's the thing. It's like to the people around, that didn't mean anything. But my friend next to me, who was white, was like, "You're a piece of shit." And he's like, "You're a racist piece of shit." And the guy was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa." Because nobody wants to be called that word if you look white, correct? He's like, "Whoa, what did I do? I gave him a compliment and blah, 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 blah." And then his friend next to him was like, "Oh my God, here comes the PC police. What did he do wrong? You can't compliment people anymore." So my friend, I didn't have to say a word. My friend said, "No, think about it. Did you tell anybody else that they spoke well? Do you know how it is to tell a minority that they speak well? Why would they not speak well?" And you could literally see the light bulb come on that guy's head like, holy shit. I didn't realize generally didn't realize that now me and that guy's been close friends for like 15 years now. But, and that's where I'm getting at with some people say things and they don't actually realize the depth of what they're saying. Does that make sense?
Most definitely, most definitely. It's like when
By the
people
way,
are
that
saying,
white
"Well,
guy
he,"
was Dave. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah,
Harold,
well,
you were
it's
supposed to say which one? The one that told you you smoke well, or the one that stuck up for you?
well, I mean, and I've heard it. I'm articulate. Yeah, I don't sound like, or, oh, when I'm talking to someone on the phone, and then later on they meet me. Oh, you didn't sound black. I'm like, well, what does it sounding black means?
Oh,
So,
wow, my
you
God, I
know,
got that one my whole life.
It's like the cop who
so
joined the Klan
It's like the
on the
what?
phone. David Duke, he's David Duke's BFF.
I
exactly.
remember doing a conference call back in the day with this group in Alabama because we were going to go down and do some volunteer work. And we're talking, we're getting all the logistics done. And the guy says, "Oh, when you come down here, don't bring any of those lazy black people with you." And
Oh,
and I said,
Whoa,
"Yeah, this is before
whoa!
Zoom." And I said, "Well, considering that I'm in charge and I'm black," and all you heard was, remember the sound that used to say, you heard, "One person has
Crickets.
left the conference." I could not find that guy the entire 2 weeks I was there.
hey,
Wow.
Bill. Yeah, you seen Bill? I'm looking for Bill.
Well, and part of this thing, I would say, there's a difference between being racial and being
Mhm.
racist, right? And and being aware of yourself, being aware of others, and I mean, it is possible to not have race. I mean, there are societies where, race is, as we conceive it, is this construct, right?
Mhm.
And we've
Hmm.
defined it that, there are a lot of other differences between you guys, all of us, right? But someone would probably categorize, they see me and Harold and they're going, yeah, the white guy, the black guy. There are other places where that wouldn't necessarily be the categorization, the social categorization they'd go with.
They just
And
call you American. Two
or
Americans.
yeah, I mean, just they would come up with some other thing. And the point though is that we have a social categorization, we have stereotypes of people, because you go through life, you understand yourself, you understand others, you create a categorization to understand the world. This is natural social psychology. And so you're talking about, you said Texas, right? Well,
Yeah.
you honestly, you made a stereotype of Texas, right? Like, you said it in a way that implied, well, Texas, they're all like that down there. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. That was implied in your story, right? And on the one hand, most of us are probably like, oh, yeah, we know, because, well, maybe that makes sense. Maybe
Well, it's
there's
yeah,
a
because
lot of
it's like
truth
what
to
you
it.
said about it's not that, hey, all Texans are like that. It's like, I'm not surprised when you hear certain stories and they tell you where it was. You're like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
But and my point is, look, is we can't, you can't criminalize having generalizations about groups and places and things,
Right.
because we do that, and
Mhm.
often they're quite correct. I mean, there's a lot of empirical content to them, and just that's how we are as people. We do that.
Yeah.
And so being racial is one thing. Being racist, the guy who, said, don't, that was very overt, unbelievable, can't believe this guy has a career anywhere with that kind of attitude. But um, my thing though was, when you said, had the guy talking about being articulate, right?
Mhm.
Um, well, the first racial thing, I remember I was working it for People Express Airline, and I'm in Newark Airport, and um, a somebody sent me to do something, right, and to get somebody, and I go to another person, and I'm trying to describe the guy who sent me, and he was black, and I am going through every other description of somebody who, by, no, I'm not saying the one critical thing, in this woman who herself was black just looked at me side and go, was he black? And I'm like, yes, yes. But I didn't even want to acknowledge that I noticed, right? Because I grew up, with like, oh, it's going to be so offensive to say that someone's black. That's being
Yeah.
racial, not being racist. I'm just describing the guy. That's what he looked like,
Yeah.
right? And uh, then later on, trying to understand the attitudes. The thing about the articulate thing, I remember
We
it's
do
always
we
been,
do have, you got to remember, we do have, black people do have the we fit the description PTSD going on too. So
oh, but dude, like I'm painfully aware of like things like being a boomer and that sort of thing. Um, I frequently am like, oh yeah, boomer using technology here, help me out. Um, the thing though is, I went to my drill sergeants, right? So I'm a lieutenant, and I was talking to my drill sergeant, and this is like relevant to the articulate. This is the closest I came to that in my life, and I just talked to there were a couple of them there, and I'm like, you know, can I ask you something? And they're like, okay, XO, what do you want to know? So, well, you guys talk to me and you sound like this. I hear you talking to each other. It's very different. Can you explain this to me? And they just laughed at me. The term code switching hadn't been invented yet,
mhm.
but they were like, laughing at me and, just kind of like, okay, here's what it is, And it's like, what's going through your mind when you talk to me? That's not, I was just kind of like, help me understand this.
It's that construct, whether right or wrong. I mean, Harold, you could speak to it. It's this fear, like, Chris Rock, when he did his special and he finally responded to the Will Smith thing, and everybody, some people were like, what does that mean at the end when he says, I had parents and they told me you don't fight in front of white people? And somebody will go, well, why do they care what you do in front of white people, what you do versus black people? All the older black people I grew up with were very adamant about that. You don't act a certain way in front of white people, and it's because of that fear of, this is how it paints a picture of all of us, and this is how they see us as. And it was made when I was a child as an important thing to think about. Now, as an adult, I don't think about it at all. I could give two shits. But as a kid, that's what was told to me. And because the thing is, black people, now I know white people in a sense of, they get lumped into the every white person's racist kind of category, which is ridiculous. But minorities always have this thing more often of, whatever some of them do, all of them just do it. So that articulate thing always struck out to me as, wait, every black person doesn't talk like they're from the hood, even though I was, just like every white person doesn't talk like they're from a trailer park. But we'll get lumped in that we all have to sound this certain way. And that was the thing that always gets a minority on the, you speak. They used to do it. I mean, in the NFL, quarterbacks. Every time they had a black athlete in the NFL back in the day come on, it's like, oh, he's very articulate. He speaks well. It's like, well, how the hell is he supposed to speak? He just went to college. It's like he just spent 3 years in college. You don't think he can form a sentence?
Well, and I think, because you also had the stereotype of the dumb jock,
Yeah,
regardless of what the position that that particular athlete played, you did not expect them to be expressive or be able to communicate, at a certain standard or at a certain level, which is, again, it's totally unfair and it's prejudgmental of that individual before you had a chance to hear them and see them. And then some of the same people that you thought were very articulate, you found out they were also ignorant. They had no clue what they were talking about, but they were just talking.
that's so
So
funny that you say that, because Dominique Foxworth, who was the former, he was actually the president of the NFLPA and also was president of the NBA Players Association. He said when he first had a meeting with all the owners, he was intimidated. These are billionaires, they're businessmen, they're smart. And he said after about 20 minutes in that room, he's like, most of these people are as dumb as the people I know around. So that fear just quickly went away, because we have a thing with where stature is supposed to mean your intelligence for some reason. That's supposed to
mm,
dictate the level of your intelligence. Speaking of intelligence, was this is an intelligent thing? Colorado Supreme Court. Oh, that is the wrong. He's laughing because he knows where I'm going. I can't wait to get Dave in on this. Colorado Supreme Court ruling that kicked Trump off the state primary ballot. Okay, let's talk about that. The
Mm.
implications on that. When someone, and this is for people who don't know, if someone is not allowed to be on a ballot, you still can't write them in, correct?
Well, the order. Well, one, there's no general usage here. This is a unique situation, but the order in that case explicitly forbid counting. I mean, because people can write them in. You
But it
know,
won't count.
you can write Mickey Mouse in too. They won't tally it, and there is that. But I mean, the bottom line on this is highly unlikely to play out,
Mhm.
right? That the Supreme Court is very likely to demur on this, mainly because they'll probably, you know, hang up on the insurrection thing and all. The order, by the way, though, is written, the judges, they made this order and then immediately stayed it until the day before the ballots are printed, and then put caveats that if the Supreme Court is considering this, that it's still stayed. And so Trump's name is probably going to go on the Colorado ballot. And, you know, there's a lot of indicators that this is likely to not survive the Supreme Court challenge. And this is what I've gotten from legal commentators, and the way they wrote the decision. The Colorado court, seemed to be leaning that way. Now, whether it should or not is another matter, but there is that.
So, what was the point then? Was this just to make a statement? I
Well, no, they made their ruling. They just one thing is they are trying to not have an irreversible decision. Like if you made it past when the ballot is published and Trump's name wasn't there, but then it turned out that no, the Supreme Court overruled them, then you would have had an irrevocable. You couldn't put his name back on the ballot, and you would have harmed democracy. Because some people actually care about harming democracy, uh, and so there's probably and I think that is going to be as much a motivator for the Supreme Court of, well, if we limit the choice, that is messing around with the election, and they're probably going to be trying to find a way out of it, because limiting we've never had an insurrectionist go for president, but we've also never really limited who could be on the ballot through the courts, and who the voters can choose from. That's kind of itself chilling in a way.
Well, I think also, you look at the fact that this is the primary election, not the general election. So, they're trying to figure out who's going to be their nominee and who should legally be allowed to represent that particular party. Now, in this particular instance, I've heard it like a 50-50 toss up. No one knows what the Supreme Court will do because that same individual has cited that he basically wants to create a strong president position, kind of like, the mayor without a city manager. He's going to basically, I can't say do away with the other branches of government, but he wants to weaken the other branches of government and basically make himself untouchable, as president. And so some people are concerned. Now, the whole issue of, and I know Dave could talk even more about this elaboratively, is the issue of states' rights. Do states have control of elections, and should they have the right to decide based on certain actions that they've deemed criminal to remove one's name from a ballot or not? So I know these issues are going to be heavily weighed when it goes to the Supreme Court, because I think the former president has already filed an appeal or indicated he's filing an appeal to the Supreme Court of this particular decision. You know, I have no dog in this fight. So, but I want to make sure that, if we're going to be consistent about states' rights, then guess what? Colorado was not wrong. Now, I will tell you factually, when I was at a convention back in September at our hotel, we are at our convention, and at that same hotel, that same time weekend, um, the Florida GOP was having their quarterly meeting. And the night before, they had this big dinner, fundraiser, whatever. The following morning, there was a private meeting, which I happened to talk to an individual who was in the meeting, who eventually left. But that private meeting, they were having a discussion about getting the former president, or not the former president, not being allowed to be on the Florida ballot, for the primary. So the conversations are being had. However, we don't know how it's going to play out in the courts, because I know if this goes down in Colorado, what's to stop any GOP or in any state, because those different groups may want to try to move away from the former president. They may not use the same logic, i.e., 14th Amendment, insurrection, or J6, whatever we want to deem I guess, that bridge too far. But whatever it was that caused them to move in this direction, we're starting to now see it's going to have to play out in court. And once the Supreme Court makes a ruling, that's going to set the stage for the remainder of the states and which way they could potentially go as a result of it.
Right, because everybody sees who's going to do it first, and what happened when they did it. Now we all know what we can do.
Yeah, and I am going with a preponderance of the experts I have actually seen. So it's nothing scientific in that, and it could be that the Supreme Court will go absolutely the other way. I don't. I'm not a Supreme Court watcher, so I would not put my expert over your expert in any way. I would say though, with regard to states' rights, because the Colorado Supreme Court was interpreting a federal document, the 14th Amendment, it isn't actually a states' rights issue. If Colorado was talking about, because each state has its own rules for how you get on the ballot, caucuses versus they have a whole bunch of rules of how you get to be the Republican or Democratic person listed on the final election. Um, and that would be a states' rights issue. And because they are interpreting a federal requirement and saying this federal requirement doesn't, there's less of a states' rights issue involved here, because they are interpreting a federal requirement. And so the Supreme Court's ruling will be very authoritative and almost certainly binding on all the other states. The question is, my question is, if they rule that he was an insurrectionist and Colorado goes, I'm wondering, then we get into the will the states enforce it? Right? Will there be red states that put Trump on the ballot or what? I don't know, but it's a mess. I suspect a lot of Republicans would, in the hierarchy especially, would love it if the Supreme Court ruled Trump invalid, because they could get Trump off the ballot, get somebody else in there, but blame, still fire up the base, right? If their problem is if they picked Nikki Haley, right, who would, I think, be a serious threat to Joe Biden, right? If you had Nikki Haley up there, that would be a real threat. But the MAGA crowd will be turned off by her because they didn't choose Trump. And so they're really worried, that turnout will drop out. The thing is, if it's Nikki Haley, but the Supreme Court did that, even though these are the guys that just did away with Roe v. Wade, they'll turn on them like a rabid animal pretty quickly. The thing is, though, that might give them let them eat their cake and have it too. And so I think that's probably, but no, that's not going to have an effect on anything. It's going to be the Supreme Court deciding this, and then the we'll have the we're still waiting for the immunity thing, right? That's the other thing.
You
The
just
Supreme
gave me
Court
a
has a lot of Trump business.
it's logging up their case logs. You just gave me a migraine when you said Trump Biden. I feel like a person that's going to watch a movie. It's like, can we just get new actors? It's like I don't want to see this again. I just don't want to see it again. Whether you love Biden or you love Trump, hey, kudos for you. It's like I'm just speaking for myself. It's like get these two as far away from me as possible. But here's my question.
My question first is, who loves Biden? This is my question. Who
Oh, you can
actually
just go on the
loves
internet and see
Biden?
people who love Biden. You just got to read the comments on YouTube or Twitter. There are people who love Bernie Sanders, love Biden, love Hillary, love Trump, love everybody has
Well,
their everybody has their little pocket people that just will live and breathe whatever they say. They can do no wrong.
That's not dirty at all.
but
Will they
I
do
love
it? Do you
democracy.
think they will do with Trump like they did with Bush? And what I mean by that is when um, once Bush was done, they pretty much told him without telling him, don't be on the campaign trail with anybody. Get away. Get away. We don't want to see you in Michigan with this person, in Ohio with this person. Get away. Do you think they're going to do the same thing with Donald Trump? Like,
I think the party won't do that because they know that if they do tell him that, he's going to do what? Blast it to his followers. And so that could cause even more implosion within the GOP. You know, what I would say, and also in answer to your question earlier, as far as individuals, my focus is on policies, and I love them. I love democracy enough to say that I'm not going to go for a dictator. That's just my spiel on my whole approach.
mhm.
And preferably the policies that of whomever I deem is more beneficial for the country. That's where I'm going. And I
Harold says
think
policy over personality.
right now, part of the challenge that we have now is no matter how this thing ends up,
Hmm.
part of the narrative that's being said is that Biden's DOJ is targeting said political adversary. That's part of the narrative that's being spewed in many of the other news cycles that I really don't watch, but I watch briefly just to make sure I understand what the talking points are and what their perspectives are. But at the end of the day, we're getting messy instead of being merry in our democracy. And if we're not careful, when we look at things that are forthcoming and what's being said at some of these rallies and things of that nature, we pay attention to what's being said. We know what's forthcoming. And I think we need to vote not so much with our feelings, but vote on the facts of what we want to see moving forward.
But hasn't that always been a part of it, David?
Feelings, yes.
I, you know what? I don't recall democracy being at stake quite the way it is here. Trump is, the normalization of this uh, is I think very wrong, right? This guy. I mean, think about his image, right? He violates norms. Therefore, that means he's doing crap that nobody else did. It started with not giving out his tax documents that everybody since Nixon had done, and it kept going. And now, and then it moved to remember all the other guys in all the other elections when these people say, "Oh, they've had other electors. Democrats have protested. They have protested the results. Yeah, and they lost, and they conceded and wished their and actively supported their successor. That was a major norm of democracy. Trump
I think
blew that
well,
away. I mean, he went beyond that to being a freaking to being an insurrectionist. We're using things from the Civil War, right? Rules from the Civil War after the aftermath of that. So for Harold to say, hey, democracy's at stake. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's on the table. Trump put it there. And he's out there with Mussolini's 2025 guide. I mean, the guy's a fascist. There's no way. That's not partisanship. That's using a definition of fascism, right? That's just applying the definition. And you are seeing this, and it's happening, and it's very alarming, right? And so I don't come on and explode about it, but at the same time, it is. And so, and frankly, this is my thing. Democrats will always disappoint you. This is my thing. I'm sorry that that's the thing, but just when you need them to produce somebody, now they have produced people. They produced Barack Obama. They produced, well, Bill Clinton was a very popular and good president. They produced, people along the way that have done things pretty well. But it seems, when Bush was there, and I was voting for anybody but W, I got John Kerry. And I was like, yeah, I voted for him, but
But
I couldn't blame anyone who didn't. I couldn't look at someone and go, "Oh my God, how did you vote for Bush again?" I had to go, "Yeah, Kerry, I could understand that." Yep.
What? You didn't vote Ross Perot? You look like a Ross Perot guy.
Oh God, Ross Perot's an idiot. Um,
um,
I used
I
to
didn't.
vote for Republicans,
I didn't
honestly.
do like I didn't look back on history and kind of dive into what was going on, but I think the Bush Gore election, I was in, I think, the fourth grade or
Oh
something,
my
and
God.
so I could kind of remember there people saying there was some fraud or the counts off or some other things that were happening when I was a kid and didn't care too much about it. We have a comment from Christ Brings a Sword. It says America died in 2021 and we are
Bird?
just pilgrims moving through now. We have no constitutional projections today. Okay. Uh, I don't know what to do with that. Dave, what do I do with that?
I have no context for that. I can't. Um, no, I mean, well, and here's the thing: we are seeing the movements. We are seeing the institutional mechanisms grind on. Right? It's taking frickin' forever, but the people who did not, did not support the peaceful transition of power, right, after the election, are being brought to account, right? And we are going to see the Supreme Court rule in on Trump's presidential immunity, and there's no way they don't say, there's no way they don't shut him down, because there's no, I mean, it's just a ridiculous claim, right? And it's also ridiculous that the highest court would ever say, yes, our entire branch of government is powerless against this, against all future presidents. There's just no way that's not, that, that decision is kind of obvious, right? But we're seeing that, they are bringing these things up. We are bringing up this insurrection claim, right? And so, these protections are there. It's just what some people think are constitutional claims, right? If you ever watch a sovereign citizen traffic stop on TikTok, there are people who have some pretty bizarre ideas out there. And so, no, those things don't necessarily fit. Do we have a new comment?
Yes, as soon as you said bizarre idea, the Pilgrims claimed America as a temporary home that lasted from 1620 to 2020, and now it's time to go home.
I don't know. I think my family meant to stay here. I mean, they very clearly, I don't think it was temporary at all. They were going to
We,
make
we've
they were
got
going to make
way
their
too we've got
city
way
on
too
a
much
hill.
blood on our hands to give up now.
Dripping,
Wow,
dripping.
that's interesting.
You can't you can't almost genocide a group of people, enslave a group of people, infringe upon rights on a gender of people, and then say, "All right, that was a great experiment. Let's all just go back to our countries of origin."
Wow.
I don't
But
know, but yeah, and they're not our countries. And this is the thing. you know, while yeah, my ancestors 1620 they came, you know, 1600s they came here, so we've been here since. You know, there's no home to go back to. You know, just like I
They know
mean,
you
you
back.
know, you guys can't be sent back anywhere, right? Except
We don't
in
know
some
it,
racist
and
fever
with
dream.
us, we don't know exactly. Like you may go back to Ireland or any other ethnic background you have up, unless I do my
I,
20 DNA, 23 and DNA or whatever it's called. I don't know what specific region or country I would be going back to in Africa anyway.
well, and what country in Europe? You know, I mean, granted, it's you know,
Mhm.
because I have German ancestry. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, it's you know, it's so watered down and mixed up now that you know,
And they
no.
don't want us either. You know what would happen if, let's just say, hypothetically speaking, if every American citizen had to go back to some, they would close the. You think we have a problem with Mexico? They would close the border of every country. And
I
so,
always they didn't want the pilgrims, right? These people were explicitly rejected in Holland, I think.
yeah,
Right? They were told to get the hell out,
right.
and then told get the hell out of England. And so yeah, we were kicked out of every self-respecting country in the world. I think that was Bill Murray's line on the
They don't
subject.
like
So
any of our influences. Who's your boy? I'd say our boy. I can't believe his name is um, leaving my mind. Our favorite BBC host, Harold.
Oh, I know exactly who you're talking about.
Why is
He's
his
with
name eluding me? I just listened to him yesterday.
LBC. Yeah, LBC
Oh,
is who he's with. You're talking about.
why is he eluding me?
I don't know. I don't know. But I want to quickly because I'm not sure how
everyone
much
likes
time
him.
we got.
Oh, we're about to
Um,
wrap up. It's James O'Brien, but
yes.
he deals with MAGA people daily that live in
Oh
England that
man,
aren't even American and never lived in America, and he has to
destroys
deal
them.
with them all the time. So you think they want our people to go over there?
Destroys them every day, and they go there for the beating. I guess I don't know what to call it.
Okay.
But no, going back to what you mentioned earlier about the 2000 election, you know, and I think this 2024 election could potentially, based on the Supreme Court's involvement, be impacted by their decision. You know, because we know that the Supreme Court intervened during the recounts in Florida and did not allow for a full state recount. They only allowed for certain counties to be recounted, and then Al Gore conceded. Now, with this decision with Colorado, depending upon which way they go, it will have an impact on our election, you know, based on whatever constitutional merits that they decide or their position and or interpretation. And we know judges' jobs are to interpret the law.
Mhm.
However, we realize that they all don't see the law through the same lens. So it's going to be interesting for me to see how this thing plays out with the appeal to the Supreme Court and how soon they rendered their decision. Because at the end of the day, you know, something's going to have to be done in an expedited manner because 2024 is around the corner.
I got you. Harold, is this one of your friends?
I don't know. I can't see. I'm only seeing Dave and your box.
My home
Have,
is the body
have
of
you seen the
Christ.
video
Raptors.
where the guy comes from the future? He jumps back, or he jumps to the future, and he's like, "How are things going?" And they're like, "Yeah, it's not so bad." And what happened about the environment? All this other stuff. Go. Well, we had a rapture, and you know, hundreds of millions of people left, and pretty much the planet's good now. and
Oh wow,
and uh,
wow.
and so that was the whole thing that when you know is kind of like Infinity Wars, right? Thanos
Yeah,
was right,
get
and
these
so
Christians out of here.
I'm gonna leave it on this. I don't mean to quote this person so much, but I mean they're the one commenting today, and I'm gonna leave it on this. If we could
uh,
say the United Nations is the dragon, then 2024 is the year of the dragon, which will shake the heaven and the earth. And my response to that is, whatever you are smoking, please send some to my house.
Me too. I need 2 doses. I need 2 bags.
but I'll just point out that we're not offended by what this guy is saying. This is
No,
not. I mean, he's saying something very divergent from
Mhm.
our beliefs about, well, reality.
Yeah.
But it isn't the kind of speech that he should be canceled for.
No.
And I mean, so there's a good example of
I welcome it.
there's categories. There's some speech
Mhm.
that's hateful, and and there's other speech
Yeah,
that,
he's not
well,
out
we
here.
can
He or
disagree and
she,
it's cool.
he or she is not out here demeaning anyone, or they
No,
have an
they're
opinion that.
expressing their opinion, and power to them.
Mhm. And that pretty much. And Dave, I like the synergy here. It's the whole reason, because normally, if these were, of course, like fall into the guidelines we're talking about, we wouldn't post. And he said, he or she said, "Thank you for not blocking me like every other channel does. That is a good thing." Hey, I'm telling you this, and everyone who's ever watched, because sometimes we have a lot of people
I
watching,
love
sometimes a little. If you're not being homophobic, sexist, racist, and doing all of those things, it's a conversation. It's the conversation. You're allowed to express your opinion. Whether I laugh at it or take it seriously, that's just my reaction and my opinion. So, if you stay out of those things, we have no problem. We hope to see you here again. And here's some other topics that we talk about. Dave and Harold, it's been a great year. We got some great things, some new segments coming up next year. And I know you guys are excited to cover all of these primaries and general elections. I know you're just thrilled to death to be waiting to do those. And we'll sprinkle some other things in between to give you guys a break.
Oh, I'm sure there's going to be a lot to talk about next year.
All right, guys. Have a good and Harold, I'll be seeing you this weekend. Dave, if you didn't know, I'm gonna see my dad for the first time in 6 years. He's a Cowboys fan. I'm a Miami fan. We're playing each other on New Year's Eve in Miami, and Harold, who is
Christmas Eve.
my uncle, and on Christmas Eve, and is a Steelers fan, he'll be sitting in between us to make
So,
sure we
so you
stay
both
father and
you'll
son.
be playing each other.
Yeah, he's a Cowboys fan, and I'm a Dolphins fan. They play
Oh,
each other.
you mean your teams
Yeah. Well,
that
come on.
you have
You know how.
absolutely nothing to do
Oh,
with,
Jesus.
and
Here we
you have
go.
no impact on what they do or not, will be playing each other in a televised event, and you will be interacting with each other at the same time?
Well, we will be interacting,
Observing.
but we will not be interacting the way we would if Harold wouldn't be sitting in between us. So he's making sure we stay a family by sitting in between us.
I don't know how I got dragged
Well,
into this,
Godspeed
but
to you.
You know how
pray
you
for
got
me.
dragged into this. Anytime the
Just pray
Cowboys
for
are
me.
Well, see,
involved, if
this is
you
the
can walk
appropriate time
around
for
with that
thoughts and
Steelers
prayers.
jersey
Okay.
in front of Cowboys fans, that's why you're going. So you can
Just
walk
pray
around.
for me. That's all.
Thoughts and prayers.
I'm
Thoughts
just
and
asking the
prayers.
people to pray for me.
All right. Dave will
All
pray
right.
for you. Good night, everybody. I mean, good day, everybody.
God bless.
Take care. Merry Christmas.